Do you wonder if you're the best version of yourself? This is the question we seek to answer in this podcast. We reveal information that helps you recover your health and become resilient. Modern life makes us fragile. Our diet, lifestyle, and environment set us up for failure. We do not accept this. We seek optimization. We strive to become dynamic. Hey, what's going on? Dr. Chris here, and today I want to talk about stress and reflux and how there's a direct correlation between the two. Now, stress kind of sounds like this nebulous idea, but there is some real, there's a real mechanism between these two ideas. So what causes reflux in the first place? I know Dr. Google will tell you that it's too much acid in the diet, too much alcohol, too much tomato sauce, spicy foods, and maybe that contributes. But there is more and more evidence coming out that's just the opposite. It's kind of counterintuitive. I know it sounds a little crazy, but low stomach acid can cause reflux. If you don't believe me, just Google hypochlorhydria. It's kind of a tough word to spell, so I'll put a blog in the show notes so you can kind of read up on it, and you can Google it yourself. So hypochlorhydria just means low stomach acid. So stomach acid is necessary. It helps us break down our food, helps us absorb the nutrients from our food, and helps protect against viruses and pathogens and things that just normally come in our food. So it's a necessary thing. It's supposed to be there. We sort of have this idea we should just block it. Now, there are things that can cause low stomach acid, like H. pylori, excessive alcohol intake, and just as we age, our stomach acid tends to go lower. NSAIDs, so ibuprofen, things like that, over-the-counter anti-inflammatories can inhibit it. And what else? Well, of course, PPIs, omeprazole, things like that, all the antacids. Those basically drop your stomach acid to zero. Those were originally supposed to be only cleared for about 2 weeks of use, but the FDA made it over the counter, which is kind of a bummer because when things are over the counter, people tend to think they're not that potent, but that's not true. They're extremely strong, just like NSAIDs. They're very strong and can cause damage for long-term use. In fact, I just had a patient the other day tell me he's been on a PPI for 20 years. That's kind of crazy. So you can almost guarantee he can guarantee that he's got no stomach acid, so it probably means he's not absorbing his food, and so he's probably going to have low nutrient status, which causes all kinds of issues. So this idea that they're just totally safe and we should take them all the time is probably not a good idea. So what happens with low stomach acid? When you eat food and it goes into your stomach and there's no acid to break it down, it then moves into your small intestine where there is a lot of bacteria. Well, there's some bacteria there. And they kind of gobble up the food, and they gobble up your B12, by the way. Instead of you getting it, they get it. That's why there's usually high correlation with B12 deficiency and low stomach acid. And then that turns into something called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So the bacteria that do exist there colonize and overgrow, and they produce gases. So if you feel bloated after a meal, that may be a sign. If you're belching a lot after a meal, that may be a sign. So what that does now is opens the valve inappropriately, and then you get regurgitation. So it doesn't take a lot. It can just be a little bit of acid, regurgitates through, and then you get reflux. So that's the most common way reflux happens. So what is the relationship with stress? So when you're stressed, and I'm talking about things that put you into a sympathetic state, the fight or flight state, the body makes decisions on what systems it needs and what systems it doesn't need. And let me just pause there. I'll come right back to the idea. So sympathetic state can be, it's not like a light switch. It's either you're on or off. It's a gradient. So you can be in like a mildly stressed state. So anyways, so the body says, what do I need? Do I need digestion when I'm running from a bear? No, I don't need digestion. So it'll inhibit all the processes involved, such as stomach acid production involved in digestion. So you don't want to be in a sympathetic state while eating because that literally will block your acid. How can you tell if you're in a sympathetic state? Probably the best way to tell is through a CGM or continuous glucose monitor. I'm actually wearing one on my arm right now. So those are things that look like a little puck you put on your tricep. And there's a little needle, and it's constantly monitoring your glucose levels. And you get to see that in a phone, in its app, in real-time data. And by the way, I'm currently using Stello. There's other brands like NutriSense and Libre, I think it is. The Stello one, I think, is like $80 up for a month supply, and it's recently integrated to Oura Ring, which I've been using, which I love. So it's kind of nice because you can see how blood sugars affect a lot of your things like your HRV. Anyways, your blood glucose is a pretty decent proxy for your stress levels because when you're in a sympathetic state, your body secretes the stress hormone, which is cortisol, and cortisol pumps sugar into the blood because it thinks you're running from something or about to get in a fight. So it's like, I need quick energy, and sugar is a quicker energy source than fat. So if your sugar levels are elevated, that's a pretty decent sign that you're in a sympathetic state. But there's even an easier way. It's not the most reliable way, but you could look at how you're breathing. That's another way to tell what type of state you're in. So you can do this right now. You can kind of close your eyes and put one hand on your chest and one hand on your stomach, and just take a couple deep breaths and just notice which hand rises first. So chest breathing, chest dominant breathing, if that's what rises first, is highly correlated to the sympathetic state. Whereas if your belly rises first on inhale, that is highly correlated to the parasympathetic state. All right, so check in on that before you eat, see where you are. All right, so before you eat, what can you do to be in a parasympathetic state? So, just like sympathetic turns off digestion, parasympathetic upregulates digestion. So one way to do that is think about your vision. So your vision, just like your chest is tied to the sympathetic state, your vision is tied to it as well. So if you're concentrated, like your gaze is fixed, you tend to be in more of a sympathetic state. Whereas if you're using your peripheral vision, you're more a parasympathetic state. And I learned this the first time I wore a CGM because I realized my blood sugars were going really high when I was driving. And I realized, oh, it's my vision. I'm like highly engaged. I'm like looking at the road. I'm really fixated. So that kind of makes sense. So what that means when you're eating is you shouldn't be staring at a phone, staring at TV, especially not the news, which is already stressful as is. You should be using your peripheral vision. So AKA like eating with people and kind of looking around, talking to them. That's a much more parasympathetic state. You could just do a couple belly breaths, even 3 to 5 belly breaths right before having your meal. That's enough to trigger the parasympathetic system. You could meditate. I would definitely do it. In fact, if you're religious and you pray before a meal, that's probably helpful too, because prayer is kind of a state of meditation, and that will trigger your parasympathetic nervous system as well. And then, of course, there's some things you can do like supplements. Now, I'm not trying to give any dietary advice. Definitely clear anything with your trusted healthcare provider before you do any changes like this. But there are some gentle things you can do that are really hard to cause any harm. So you can stimulate acid production through the use of things like apple cider vinegar. So like a tablespoon in water, like 15 minutes prior to a meal. You want to taste it too. So you don't want to dilute it so much you don't taste anything. You want to try to stimulate salivation. That upregulates acid production. You can also use bitters. So same thing, a little bitters in water, about 15 minutes prior to a meal. Not so much where you dilute it. That can upregulate digestion as well. And of course, if this is a big problem for you, if you're constantly getting reflux, or even if you're just getting a lot of belching often after a meal, that's probably the time to go see a functional medicine practitioner, get some blood work done, do some testing to find out what's causing it. There's a great test called the GI map, which looks at your gut microbiome, because you could have something underlying like an H. pylori that can be addressed. So that's all I have for you today. Let me know if you have any questions. A ship in harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are meant to do. What does this mean? It means exposing yourself to difficult situations so you become resilient. If you need help building resilience, check out our flagship program called Physiologic Flexibility. This is a 3-month do-it-yourself program that teaches you how to maximize your homeostatic regulators, such as your pH, blood glucose, O2 and CO2 tolerance, and temperature. We give you specific action items through the program with the goal of becoming anti-fragile. If you want to become the inspiration for your friends and family, this is the program for you.